Good evening. Welcome to Fowler Hall and to tonight's event at the intersection of liberal arts and STEM, design, AI, and inclusion with John Maeda. I'm Mary Kate Ramker, a senior from Hammond, Indiana, majoring in visual communications design.
And I'm Zach Hellman, a senior from Island Lake, Illinois, majoring in industrial design. At the intersection of liberal arts and STEM is a series of events that highlight how the liberal arts, science, technology, engineering, and math disciplines have greater capacity for meaningful change when they intersect. In partnership, they push students intellectually, challenging them to be independent thinkers who are bold, visionary leaders. The College of Liberal Arts is pleased to present tonight's event with support from Purdue Polytechnic Institute.
This evening's speaker, John Maeda, completed bachelor's and master's degrees in electrical engineering and computer science from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and then received his PhD in design science at the University of Tsukuba in Japan. A designer, educator, computer scientist, author, speaker, and executive, he works to combine technological innovation with an artistic emphasis on simplicity. Maeda is an internationally recognized thought leader at the intersection of design and technology.
As a professor in the MIT Media Lab, Maeda taught engineers to elegantly design and designers to fluently code. As the 16th president of Rhode Island School of Design, he became a leader in the effort to transform STEM to STEAM, adding art as an educational emphasis. In the corporate world, he has served as a design partner at venture capital firm Kleiner, Perkins, Caulfield, and Byers, and on the boards of Google, Sonos, eBay, and global advertising firm Weed & Kennedy. Maeda shared his annual Design and Tech report at the recent South by Southwest conference in Austin.
Since August 2016, John Maeda has served as a global head of computational design and inclusion at Automattic, the parent company of WordPress. There, he oversees design efforts and is working to address the diversity gap in the tech field. One project, the Appalachian Graphic Design Fellowship Program, exposes Kentucky high school students to design as a potential career path, particularly exploring the opportunities enabled by remote work. You can read more about the program in a recent Fast Company article. But first, let's turn our attention to tonight's presentation. Throughout his talk, John will take questions from the audience. Please join us in welcoming tonight's guest speaker, John Maeda.
Thank you for the welcome. Thank you. Wow. Look at this, young people. First of all, I could never do what you did just now when I was a student, so hats off to leadership. It is not easy to stand in front of people, so there was no nervousness at all. So I think you both are going to do very well. I also asked Mary Kate and Zach what I should say today. So I'm going to start with that. I had a few requests also from the social team, so thank you. And a variety of you I've asked as well. Why am I asked what I should talk about? It's because I learned over time that the problem with people who come and talk to you is they have no idea what you're thinking. Have you noticed that? People are guessing what you want. But I found over time, I prefer to know what you want and to try to achieve it. The first request I had, which is very relevant, is the field of design and how it is not changing rapidly. Let me give an example. Yesterday I was in New York City. There was a special gala for a famous designer named Bob Greenberg. He was the founder of a company called RGA. It's a big design advertising juggernaut. And I was on this panel, and I was asked, what should we add to Bob Greenberg's collection? And I pointed out something I've just noticed in the last 3 years or so, that if you are a designer, so who knows the Bauhaus? Bauhaus, okay, Bauhaus, right? If you know the Bauhaus, and you're asked to name 5 Bauhaus masters, you're most likely going to have 5 guys in your mind, right? 5 guys, 5 men from the Bauhaus, maybe 10. And if you're asked for a woman from the Bauhaus, it's kind of hard. I'm not sure if you've noticed this. Who can name 5 women from the Bauhaus? You just can't. It's because the education has been catered to remember men of the Bauhaus more than women. It turns out the Bauhaus was 50% women and 50% men. It was a progressive institution, yet over time it had lost names. If you'd like a name, think of Marion Brandt. She was an industrial designer at the Bauhaus. She designed a special kind of kettle that is in different collections in the world. Think of these kinds of, look for these types of people because they're very hard to find. Now, on the one hand, you can do it because it's the right thing. On the other hand, you can just be opportunistic because you want to get ahead in life. And how do you get ahead in life? You have to look at the things that people overlook. So I just invite you to ask all these questions around design. Who are you seeing more often? Who do you not know about? And it's very easy to look at the people you don't know about and learn so much more from them because they're on the edge. The second question I had was, do I know what's useful to anyone who's about to graduate? Or have I seen what happens when you graduate? I will tell you that I have seen a lot of this. One of the beautiful things of being a president of a university or any kind of institution of education is called commencement. Do you know commencement? It's like dun, 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 dun. Everyone has Jedi robes on. The parents are the happiest ever because you're never coming back home. It's like the best time ever. And then there's this moment during commencement where you shake the hand of the student, and then they're going to go out there. But I remembered in 2009, during the financial crisis, as I was shaking every student's hand, I kept wondering, will they have a job? Because the world's changed. And each year I'd wonder, were they trained to be able to survive in the new world? I will tell you that it is a different world for younger people entering the workforce today. It is by no means as easy as it was in the past, because in the past the world was linear. In the past there were no computers. Without computers, the world could move in a more predictable way. Things didn't change very fast. Industry couldn't innovate as quickly. But in the mid-1980s, something happened. This thing called the microchip, developed in the 60s and 70s, began to accelerate. And when it hit the 80s, suddenly computers were consumerized. This is called Moore's Law, the idea that a computer that is said fast, said powerful, in roughly 18 months becomes twice as powerful. And it keeps doing that. Now, it doesn't sound like a big deal. Like in the 1970s, you have a computer, so it was fast, but now it's twice as fast. It's a big deal. It's twice as fast. It's kind of interesting, but twice as fast. You wait 3 years, now it's 4 times as fast, but that's not a big deal either. But then you wait another year and a half, it's now 8 times as fast, but that doesn't sound very big. It turns out if you look at the 70s to this period now, and you calculate that doubling, the computer is roughly 9 billion times faster than the computer in the 70s, which is an odd thing. Like, who owns a car? Anyone owns a car? You own a car. So you have a car, right? Now imagine you bought that car 30 years ago, and it went like 80 miles per hour. It cost maybe like $16,000. Now imagine buying a car now, and it goes at 9 billion miles per hour, and it costs $18,000. You just can't imagine that, right? But that's what happened with computers. Computers have gotten so fast, and they're only getting faster and more powerful. And so the world that students, graduates, are entering today is a world that nobody truly understands because it's happened so fast and it's not stopping. So I have a great deal of empathy for the younger generation that's entering this world, because it isn't the same world that I entered in the 80s when I graduated. Now, you wonder, how are the liberal arts useful in that context, right? So John, are you saying that I have to hunker down on the computer? I have to be good at code and understand the physics of semiconductors, and that's how I'm going to head? It's good to understand a lot of that, but what's more important, especially right now, is to understand the impact of technology on people. And to understand the impact of technology on people is a timeless tradition of the liberal arts. A question of why we exist and also how we exist in relationship to others. I say this as someone who went to MIT, mind you. At MIT, I didn't go there for liberal arts. Humanities courses were a requirement. I took them as a requirement. Do you know what that means when you take a class as a requirement? It means your heart's not really into it. I'll do this. Maybe this one's the easier one or whatever. But over time, I began to regret that I hadn't dug deeper into the humanities. I was lucky to discover terrible things about technology. And it sounds kind of odd, but I was lucky to discover that for a long time, scientists have had to understand what happens when they succeed. Do some of you know about the recent Facebook issue? Have you heard about the Facebook issue? I see nodding. You know, the Facebook issue, if you aren't aware of it, is this recognition that Facebook knows everything about all of you. Surprise. And you should be a little worried because everyone's talking about Facebook, but no one's talking about Google. Nobody's talking about Amazon. Nobody's talking about, but they will, but everyone's fighting for a position of not being seen right now. Okay. And this has come from the fact that technology is amazing. Moore's law, doubling of computing power, anything is possible. Let's go build it. It's so exciting to build these systems that can do anything. The problem is that this is a common story in the history of humankind. Something amazing can be built. Let's go build it. And what happens is amazing things happen, but then something goes wrong somewhere. And once something goes wrong, the sciences cannot answer what to do with it. I was lucky when I was at MIT. I was at a place called the Media Lab. And it's a place of like magical things that happened all the time. And there are two co-founders of the Media Lab. One is a man named Nicholas Negroponte. The other person isn't as well known. His name is Jerome Wiesner. Jerome Wiesner was arguably MIT's greatest president. He led MIT during the Vietnam War era, and he was a unique figure of science because he stood for world peace. He's a physicist. He stood for world peace. Why is that? It's because Dr. Wiesner worked on the Manhattan Project. Do you know what the Manhattan Project is? So the Manhattan Project, if you're a scientist, is awesome because you get access to as much money as you need to do amazing science. And when I was at MIT, I'd have colleagues come up to me and say, John, I can't believe how lucky I am. What happened? Got a huge grant. I can do a Manhattan Project. And that people are high-fiving and stuff, right? It's not dissimilar to what's happening today. You know about the Uber for X? That's the Uber for whatever. That's the Airbnb. That's the Facebook for whatever. That company is just like Facebook. It's amazing. It's going to do amazing things. But what happens when something goes wrong? Hits real people. That is where the liberal arts come in. And so I'm really glad that the way this education system is working here is that you have strong liberal arts and you have strong technology. And I believe it's that combination that will create the kind of innovators that the world needs that can move at the speed of Moore's law, but also be able to think the way that humans have always thought and wondered and cared about. So I think I covered the requests, and I will go into a presentation. So I have a report that I developed that helps to contextualize all of this. Let's see. May I have the screen, please? Oh, very good. Thank you. Like magic. And I've made this report for the last 4 years. And the intent of the report has been to highlight how money, financial instruments, impact business and technology and design. Now, why is it that I focus on money? There's a reason behind that. It's because I think the challenge in the creative sphere is that creative people are kind of taught to be afraid of money. Do you know this story? You're a creative person, so don't think about the money. It's bad. Money is bad. Money is evil. It's dark. It's bad. So I was taught that for most of my life. And I think it was in my early 40s, or late 30s, where I kept having people come to me and say, John, you're the creative person. Don't worry about the money. I'll worry about the money. And at first you're like, oh, thank you for doing that for me. You know? But then after the third person told me that, you get kind of wondering, like, should I worry about the money? So I got my MBA as a part-time hobby to become unafraid of money. And in the process, I began learning how, just like all things, money can be used for bad things. It can be also used for good things. Same way with art. How many people are artists here? Artists? Okay. Art can be used for good things, but you know a few artists that are doing bad things too, right? It's the same thing. So that's why I went to the venture capital industry, to learn about the pure money world. It's fascinating. And in that world, I began to formulate this report to show how money and innovation intersect with creativity. Now, this is the 4th year it's been in its running. And so far, I've been on this hunt to understand design. Because the word design is very poorly designed. Because people don't know what design means. It means too many things. And so, how many people have designed something someone doesn't like? Raise your hand. Wow, good experience, right? Especially because of this thing called social media. So I recently designed these hats. And of course, I have someone telling me, stop doing that. It's terrible. I have someone saying it doesn't like the technology I use. I have someone saying that I'm trying to use a Mickey Mouse analogy. I have someone who's just totally upset at me. Looks horrendous. But after I started seeing this, I stepped up and said, hey, I did it. Hey, I did that. And then suddenly everyone stopped talking. Now, why is it interesting? It's because it's easy to pick on things, but when there are people involved, people change. Sometimes it gets worse, sometimes it gets bad, but I enjoy stepping in front of things to experiencing them. And that's what designers have to do now, especially if you're designing for people that aren't like yourself. Because when you design things for yourself and people like you, they all love it. They're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. It reminds me of ... And in doing so, you aren't designing for a broader market. So if you aren't designing something that slightly ticks off people, then it means you're thinking too small in some cases. So anyways, I designed the hats and caused a little kerfuffle. But The reason why I like to think about the people dimension is because of, I think IDEO was mentioned by Zach earlier. One of the co-founders of IDEO passed away roughly 5 years ago. It's a great man named Bill Moggridge. And he said he has a very simple design principle, and I always come back to it every month. He said, if there's a simple design principle that binds everything together, it's probably about starting with the people. That's not just the designers, it's who you serve. So at any moment, if you're confused about design and how to design better, especially if you're in a large company, go back to Bill's rule. Think about the people, who you're working with and who you're serving. Now, if you are interested in the future of design, we are going to release a language called Muriel. Everywhere I go, I look for, this is my Uber driver, like last week, named Muriel. But look for roughly 3 months from now, the company I'm at, Automattic, is going to open source a design language called Muriel. Why is it named Muriel? It's named after Muriel Cooper. How many of you have heard of Muriel Cooper? Probably, yeah, there you go. One person. Muriel Cooper is the pioneer behind everything you see on the screen, the computer screen. Every visual thing, transformation, the use of Helvetica, on the computer screen, Muriel conceived in the 1970s. She is a forgotten figure, but I hope that you don't forget her. So look her up, Muriel Cooper, and the language will be named after her. And maybe in 3 months from now, you can all use this language called Muriel for designing. Now I'm interactive, so this is my phone here. So if you'd like to ask me a question to get value, I'm into value because you came here, you could have eaten lunch or eaten dinner earlier, went to the bar, etc. if you were of age. But since you chose to be here, you should try to have a question answered. So just ask me a question, and if I can't get to it, I will answer it offline after this talk, okay? So, and I'll have this phone number later, but go ahead and ask a question, and I'll stop to answer it immediately. Here we go. Okay, so the Design and Tech Report is available online, which means you don't have to listen to me blah, blah, blah. It's up online. You can visit it anytime. It's free. You can ask me a question right now, and I can just take care of it right now. But I'll go through the report until I hear any questions. Right here. Okay, waiting for it. Okay. All right. Design and Tech Reports. I have 4 of them. The last 3 discovered a simple trend. Do any of you have this thing called a mobile phone? Do you have one? Do anyone have one? I think you have one. You have one. Oh, look at that. Everyone has one. Exactly. Probably everyone has one. And this thing changed everything because until the year 2008, the computer didn't need design. Why? Because nobody used the computer. Very few people used the computer before 2008. People who used the computer, they were nerds. You've got a computer at your house? It's kind of embarrassing. Anyone remember that era? I'm sure you do. But after 2008, this thing started taking off. And so suddenly, everybody had a computer. And when everybody has a computer, there are all kinds of people. And you couldn't design for computer people anymore. You had to design for everyone. So a huge demand was unlocked for these things to get easier to use. And that's why Silicon Valley and design kind of took off, just because of this. It changed everything. And that's the history of all those words in less sentences. 2015, design became about money. Do you see I have like a wrapper sign infused DE $ design over there. It became about the potential, unlocking. And I began to name 3 kinds of design, which I'll cover. And lastly, by 2017, I began looking at a phenomenon that was troubling. And I'll get to it towards the end. But a phenomenon that technology companies were making things that were not inclusive because they were primarily led by generally high-end college-educated people coming from a privileged background, and generally people who were Caucasian males, and therefore designing systems for everyone that didn't fit everyone. A simple example is most image processing algorithms are designed for lighter skin. So if your skin is darker, it doesn't do as well. Now, you wouldn't figure that out unless everyone was designing together of different skin tones. But if you're working with people with paler skin tones and you ship it, it seems great because it worked on me. Those kind of things keep recurring. And it's an issue that I began to point out in 2016. Ooh, good questions coming in. Okay. Technology, business, and design. What kind of designs exist and what kind of designs should you care about? So there's classical design, which is design that most art and design schools teach. It's design made out of physical things. Is this real? It's real. Like this thing, the stage. Physical things. Things that the chairs, my glasses, a graphic on a screen. Classical design. Then there's design thinking. Who's heard of design thinking? Probably yes, design thinking. Design thinking is very popular in the business sector. Design thinking was on the cover of Harvard Business Review. Harvard Business Review is like, a favorite place for people who like to wear suits. Design thinking is known in that world. I've discovered over time that classical designers kind of hate design thinkers. Why? Because design thinkers carry bunches of Post-it notes. And designers are like, no, we don't do Post-it notes here. And design thinkers here say, well, we do Post-it notes over here. And for everyone who makes fun of design thinkers, I always tell them, don't forget, the design thinkers make more money than the classical designers. Then there are computational designers. And computational designers are the designers that are taking into account Moore's law and the ability to work with computation to design new experiences, whether they're on a mobile phone or in an environment, or just leveraging the power of Moore's law, which again is a foreign substance that we're only still understanding right now. Okay, break. 765. What can I expect to learn from liberal arts that I can apply to information technology? Thank you, 765. You can expect to learn things that don't immediately apply, which sound strange. Like, well, I want it now. I want to use this thing right now. But the liberal arts aren't about now. They're about forever. So it's more of a long-term investment. You can't use it immediately, but you can bank it. There'll be a moment where you're like, that thing that happened in like 1700 whatever, I can use that. That'll happen to you 5 years from now. So you have to bank it. That's why it's hard. It isn't like who likes snack bars here? Like snack bars? You like snack bars, come on. Snack bars are great, right? You're like hungry, like, oh my gosh, I have a snack bar, right? Liberal arts are not a snack bar. They're not a snack bar. They're like one of these things that you can have on the shelf, and it's like a snack bar that lasts for a long time. It's a special kind of snack bar. It doesn't have a due date. Okay. Area code 972. How do you maintain your motivation to create and innovate? Oh, this is deep, 972. It's not easy. I think that I'm lucky to have good friends, dear friends, long-term investment in friends. They can be older people, like a mentor. A mentor can kind of reawaken you. The problem you'll discover as you get older is all your mentors die. This gets kind of sketchy after a while. So I found that younger people are often my mentor. I think I was pretty down like a couple of years ago. And then one of my like old students, I started talking to him. And he said, "What's wrong with you?" Like, "Get back up." I was like, "Whoa, okay, I can use this." So he's my mentor now. So I guess I maintain it by being open to it from everywhere. And I wasn't always like that, though. I remember I was going to, I was going to go to Milan, but the plane wasn't going to go there. I was in Boston, so I had to go to JFK, New York, from Boston on a little kind of tiny plane. And so I got on this tiny plane, and then there was a woman sitting next to me. And she was roughly 20 years my senior. And she starts talking to me. And she says, "You don't look happy right now. What's going on? I'll be your older sister. Just talk to me." So I was describing something that was going down at MIT. It was a little messy. And she said, don't trust that person. It's like, oh, that person, listen to them. She was giving me all this directions. She was really, really helpful, you know. I said, "Oh, wow." So anyways, I finally got to Milan, and my friend Paolo picked me up. And I said, "Paolo, I had this amazing experience. This complete stranger like figured everything out for me." And then Paolo looked at me with this really funny look, and he said, "Well, that's because you weren't listening to people around you in general. It happens all the time. If you just listen, there's stuff everywhere, from anywhere." So I think it's because I had that moment. I was like, oh, okay, I got to listen to stuff. Error code 404. Wow, they're coming in. What is the overlap between the three types of design you outlined? Very astute, 404. The overlap of these three things are where companies are being the most successful. The overlap is where someone is using design thinking to make their organization less inflexible. Because design thinking at its core is about listening. It's about co-creation. Do you know what co-creation means we're working together. Non-co-creation says, "I told you to do this." "I told you to do this" is a very popular leadership model. Have you heard of it? It's really, for this person, it's awesome. Like, go do all this plants, move around. Feels good, you know? Co-creation is a plant saying, "I don't think I want to move around. I think I want to talk to the other plant." Just like, you know, it's like, "No, it's taking too much time." But this method is going to be sustainable. So design thinking unlocks that in an organization. Computational design leverages all that can happen in this and the cloud and everything. It's where the most value can be created very quickly. Classical design is important because it is tied to the liberal arts, I believe. It's tied to an older way of thinking, a timeless machine intelligence. And so if we put the three together, good things happen. You could also just have two. It's like a mix and match. But if you just have one, you're kind of in trouble. So definitely combine if you can. Oh, someone's calling me John. 915. Hello, John. My name is Jorge. Hello, Jorge. How are you doing? Thank you for your talk and for collecting our questions. Please don't mind my selfish question. Not at all. I'm a PhD candidate in materials engineering. Been a great fan of the work of the Media Lab. Neri Oxman's work in particular. Do you have any advice for landing a job at the Media Lab? Yes, I do. We had a great conversation about that just now, about how the thing you have to realize is the world is all about connections. It's all about connections. It doesn't matter how good you are. Sorry to hear this, but connections are everything. Some people are lucky to have connections. Those people tend to be very successful. Example, I'll be somewhere, and then I'll be somewhere fancy, and then I'll see this young person. Hi. And this person is the son of someone important. And this someone who important is introducing their son to everybody. This is a good situation for this son to be in, right? It's like going to a shopping mall, important person shopping mall. Most people don't have access to that. So you have to be scrappy. And when I say scrappy, I mean, you have to understand people. And you have to understand that people want to see you in order to make a judgment decision. So what you should do is you should try to get to wherever you insert anything you want to do. Somehow accidentally be there. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I'm in Austin today for some reason. Oh, wow, what a coincidence. I get to see you. Create the coincidence to be near the person, number one. Number two, the person usually has a barrier. You know what a barrier is? A barrier is like someone who's like the gateway. The gateway is very important. The gateway is often someone you think isn't important, but they're often the most important person. Let me give you an example. I remember when I was at Rhode School of Design, I would often eat in the cafeterias. I would often go to cafeterias because the students were my customers. So I wanted to learn how, like, what do you want? So I remember like sitting, I would go to the cafeteria, and sometimes you'd carry the tape, I would be carrying my plate, and no, don't sit with me. Awkward. So I would walk around my plate, and then there was someone said, come sit here. I said, oh no, what's going to happen? So I sat next to this person, and this person said, I really want to get into this major, but I can't. It's full. And I asked him, well, how did you try? Well, I sent an email. So you sent an email? Yeah, I sent an email, and I tried to like go see him, and his assistant wasn't very nice to me. And I said, well, what did you do? I said, well, I wasn't nice to her. I said, okay, you got this all wrong. So I said, you're going to go back and apologize to her, number one. And number two, you're going to ask, when is the professor going to be back? And he says, why do I have to do all this? I said, well, it's because this person is very important, more important than the professor. Number two, I need you to write on a piece of wood how much you want to work with this professor. He said, a piece of wood? Piece of wood. Let's do it. Why? So you'll be memorable. And so, turns out, the next time I saw him, he was in that department. So that's a simple example, simplified, Jorge. But all the people in the middle are important to take very good care of and be persistent and don't give up. And even if you weren't in that special room, it can occur. Okay. Area code 765. Well, this person already answered one question, so I'll get you another question later. Another 765. What changes happened to you after design science in Japan in terms of how you approach things? Is design a science? I was mainly more interested in, when I left, so I was in Japan for 6 years. I'm born and raised in the United States. The one thing I learned by living in Japan is I'm not Japanese. It's kind of like, oh, you look Japanese, but you don't talk Japanese. And it's like, oh, this feels very awkward. It got me in touch with being different, actually, in a weird, different way. That's what changed me in Japan the most. 765. Area code 310. How can the three kinds of design be integrated to work together? Or are they exclusive from one another? That's the person, humans, people combine things. So I would urge you to, if you're curious about these intersections, become the intersection. Okay, what a good audience. You've asked such good questions, and we have 14 minutes left. Okay. And again, I will answer your questions offline, so go ahead and keep on asking them. What is a computational designer? They understand computation. They use all three kinds of design. They're thinking critically about technology. Going back to the question from the PhD candidate, science in general, you don't learn critical thinking. You learn scientific thinking. But that's why the liberal arts are so key. So I look at computational designers as needing to be critical thinkers. And lastly, over here, they have to be curious about the new. So if you're a classical designer, you tend to love paper. Who's a graphic designer here? Raise your hand. Yeah, I love the paper, right? This is smell of the inks, and it's so good, and it doesn't move around, and there's no electricity. It's the best. I love paper. I love that world. At the same time, though, the world's changing so fast. So being a classical designer, adopting what's happening is so key, like things like machine intelligence, which I think I want to jump to so we can cover machine intelligence. 1 second. Go. You have my number? OK. Simple example of why machine intelligence is important. OK. How many of you know about this country called China? Have you heard of it? Yeah, it's kind of big country. Yeah. So this is by friends at Alibaba. Alibaba is like the Google of China. And they recently released what's called an e-commerce banner robot. It isn't a physical robot. It's a computer program. But you know how like banner ads appear on your screen, banner ads, you know? You kind of don't want them. You kind of swat them away. Sometimes they're kind of good, so you might click on them, whatever. So the Alibaba AI produced 400 million banners in one day, achieving a 100% conversion rate. What that means is the robot could design the banner that you will click on because it could design that many variations. It's a simple example of where a human cannot design 100 variations overnight. But a machine can design millions of variations if it is a good AI. And so China is moving way ahead on the AI machine learning space. And is that meant to frighten you? No, it's meant to make you curious. Like, so why is it in the US we don't do that so often? Why are our tools behind? What can we learn? Now, when we think about AI, let's see here. Let me go over here. Stage it, second done. No, this one here. So how many of you use this thing called Adobe Photoshop? Photoshop people? Oh, Photoshop lovers here. Okay. All right. Okay, I love my Photoshop. So Photoshop was invented quite a while ago in the 80s. I remember when it first came out. It was, you don't know what this is, but there was something called a photomat a long time ago. It was a little hut, and you would go to develop your photographs. But the first icon for Photoshop was a photomat. It was actually called Photomat, but it went to name change. But just making images, the tools are changing. They do all kinds of things now. They have cloud inside them, built in. They have to be able to be responsive, so you can design for mobile and desktop at the same time. They have to have project management built in because you're working as a team. They also have to be flexible in how they convert to code. They have to have version control so that everyone can track changes and share graphs. And so these things are happening in the tool space. But this one here is what's going to happen over the next 3 years. We'll see more machine intelligence built into tools, like Adobe tools. It's already happening. And what does this mean? It means that the tools aren't getting smarter. It means you'll have to get smarter to understand what that means. OK. All right. Let's see the questions. Questions? 10 minutes. Got it. OK. Let me go over here. Too much over here. Let's go over here. OK. There we go over here. OK. So I want to give an example of machine intelligence. So do you know who has an Apple phone here? This is an Apple place? OK, well, a lot of Apple people. So there's this thing called Siri. So this is Siri iOS 9. Oops. No, maybe not. Siri? Hello? OK, this worked before. OK. All right. Siri doesn't want to talk on the HDMI cable. So let's do this instead. Let's unplug this. Let's do this. 1 second. That's why we'd learn. OK, internal speakers. OK.
3.81 fluid ounces.
One moment, Siri. OK, right.
1 liter is 33.81 fluid ounces. 1 liter is
Did you hear that?
33.81 fluid ounces.
That's iOS 9. This is iOS 10.
1 liter is 33.81 fluid ounces.
Kind of similar. It's a little cleaner signal.
1 liter is 33.81 fluid ounces.
This is iOS 11.
1 liter is 33.81 fluid ounces. 1 liter is 33.81 fluid ounces.
Did you notice it got better a lot? Okay. Why is this important? It's important because machine intelligence is not getting better in just little increments. It's getting better in quantum leaps. So, for instance, 3 or 4 years ago, if you talked to a computer, 1 out of 4 utterances would be an error. Like, oh my gosh, this thing is so dumb. I would say, like, whatever, it doesn't understand me, right? That's what we thought, because that's the way it was. But in 1 year, the utterance error went to under 5%. Just 1 year. It was like a 25% error rate, under 5. How's that possible? It's possible because machine intelligence took a huge leap, and those leaps are still happening. And that's just voice synthesis. That's voice recognition. But everything is changing because of it. Now, how is this different? Oh, it's one of my favorite things. This is over here. If you want to do this yourself, those of you who use CodeKit, who use code pens, hello? Let's see. Hello? Hi. Okay, it works. So this is just the off-the-shelf speech recognition technology that you can all access if you're curious. It's directly linkable from the report. But the browsers can do this now. Pretty cool, huh? But it's all built in. So if you're curious about this world, definitely check it out because it's changing. It'll change so many things. Think about how we're so wed to this screen thing. But the voice is a whole different game. It could get rid of visual design. It could get rid of so many things. So I recommend that if you're in this space, to check it out. Okay, got the voice thing, but what do I want to tell you here? Okay, AI. So machine intelligence, the way it works is in the old days, you would teach it things. You would give it if-then rules. If this, then this. If this, then this. It took a long time to teach a computer how to do things. But machine intelligence is a whole different model. Deep learning takes databases and produces patterns that are just repeated. And so if you pour data in to machine learning, it learns, it finds patterns. Now, when I say learn, it's not like how we learn. Like we have, if you have liberal arts, critical thinking. But the computer has none of that. It just sees patterns and uses them. And that's a problem. Why is it a problem? It's a problem because it's amazing. So look at this image here. That was given to a neural network, and it produced this, which is a pretty good approximation, don't you think? And you can think like, yeah, but yeah, so what? You know, a computer can now remove a watermark from an image. That's Google's work. It can take a bad image and make it beautiful. It can take 2 photos, this photo on the left and this photo on the right, and make that photo. So it can restyle content. It can make variations. It can you can give it a shoe outline, and it'll make all these shoes for you. You can easily attach expressions to photos now, as you've maybe seen. You can make anyone smile if they want to. You can make them frown with software now. It's a bit eerie and weird. And it can also fix your drawings, too. So, and this is all drawing upon patterns. And what's problem with the patterns is the patterns are flawed. Let me give an example. So Princeton recently produced a study where, you know, Google Translate, it's really powerful. You type in stuff, and it gives you a different language. Well, Google Translate, it still is that way. I don't think they corrected it. In Google Translate, if you type in he is a doctor, he is a nurse in Turkish, which is genderless. In English, it translates to he is a doctor, she is a nurse, because it uses data to build generalizations. Another example is there's 2 projects already deployed. One is a pre-crime system that police departments can use to predict where crime is going to happen. And how does it predict where crime happens? It uses databases of past crimes, and therefore it's biased to predict that a crime is happening in a lower income zip code somewhere out there. There's an artist who's made a white-collar crime map that inverts it, where the wealthiest neighborhoods light up. There's a white-collar crime happening right now. But humor aside and art aside, these data systems have our biases built into them. And this is a huge problem. But it's the kind of problem that scientists are unlikely to point out. So I guess if there's one thing I want to leave you all with thinking of why these kinds of things are affecting everything, is because if left alone to technologists and venture capitalists with the goal of being successful, we're losing this other part of rationality that I hope that you will all inject into this work that needs all of your kinds of thinkers, because as I understand it, you're cross thinkers. You're people who are thinking across. The world doesn't have enough of you. So I hope that happens. I am on time, so I will answer one more question, or I'll try to. It's kind of hard. Okay, Erica 219. What advice would you give to someone who is a liberal arts major interested going into the STEM field? Wonderful. You see that? Back and forth connection. I would urge you to talk to someone in the STEM field and learn how they think, because they think differently than you. And I would hope you'd be in a program where you could ask the same thing, where maybe in that STEM part, there's a few students that want to know, what is this liberal arts thing? So I urge you to ask for that. So all possible. And you have leaders right here in the front who dream of that. I know it sounds silly, but you'll find that leaders in higher education today desperately want to see things cross. But it's so hard to do, and they dream of it. So keep that dream, 219. Ooh, area code 317. With all these advances in AI and their capabilities to create an unlimited number of iterations in seconds, how can we as designers evolve so that we stay valuable and employable? Yes, 317. You stay valuable by understanding what they cannot do. You can only understand that if you use these systems. There are open source machine learning libraries. There are, I'm sure in the STEM fields, there's all kinds of open source work to get involved with computation. And I urge you to overcome the bias that many designers and artists have about STEM. Because STEM is understandable, and it's interesting. And if you're the opposite person, or you're a STEM person, and you want to get involved in design and arts, you have no idea how to do it, it's possible too. And so becoming a balanced person is wholly possible. It's just extra work. That's the hard part. Last question. So many questions. I'll answer this. Oh, someone's asking, giving their names now. 678. My name is blank. I was wondering if you're familiar with Clayton Christensen's book. Yes, The Innovator's Dilemma, and his coined term, creative destruction. If not, the premise of creative destruction is simply innovation and great design causes the downfall of great, this is very dark, this is good, causes the downfall of great companies simply because of the paradox of innovation. How do these design principles you're presenting combat this? I would say, so Clayton Christensen, disruptive innovation, this idea that if you have something that works really well, you start to optimize it. And so you aren't ready for something that comes up out of nowhere and disrupts it. I would say that by thinking about the 3 types of design, you're more robust as a professional. So that's why I bring them up. These 3 designs: classical design for the past beauty, design thinking for organization change as a leader, and computational design to think about the future. Okay, I think I have answered the questions and been on time. All right, everyone, thanks for staying. Appreciate it.